One of my favorite characters in Shakespeare is Bottom. Bottom is a rude mechanical. That is, he's a workman. He's an amateur actor. He's a ham. He's a great ham, flamboyantly full of himself, silly, unself-aware, and yet he is treated affectionately, really warmly by Shakespeare. Why? Because he loves theater, and that will justify almost anything. Typical of Shakespeare, the character who is the low man on the totem pole, a clown, a fool, a worker, rather than a duke or the king, maybe, not necessarily will be, but maybe, may have access to larger truths or larger possibilities than his betters. There's a wonderful moment when Bottom wakes up and he had been transformed into an ass, and he has this night of bliss with the fairy queen, to which he is largely oblivious. He's just, hee-haw, hee-haw, I need some oats. Can you get me some hay? And yet, when he is transformed back into himself and comes to his senses, well, here's how he speaks. And as I read this, think about what's funny, what is humorous, and how it's typical of Bottom, and watch for ways in which it might give us some hints or suggest more than just joking, just fooling. I have had a most rare vision. I have had a dream, past the wit of man to say what dream it was. Man is but an ass if he go about to expound this dream. Methought I was, there's no man can tell what. Methought I was, and methought I had. But man is but a patched fool if he will offer to say what methought I had. The eye of man hath not heard, the ear of man hath not seen. Man's hand is not able to taste, his tongue to conceive, nor his heart to report what my dream was. I will get Peter Quince to write a ballad of this dream. It shall be called Bottom's Dream, because it hath no bottom. This is pure Bottom. This is pure Bottom in the simple sense of being humorously self-centered. It will be Bottom's dream. And it's whatever it is, it's always about Bottom. And it's also typical of Bottom to be a goof, the way he mixes up the senses, for example. The eye of man hath not heard, the ear of man hath not seen. He's completely discombobulated. It's also sort of dramatically appropriate, that is for the moment, because he is just waking up. He's been under a spell, and he's kind of fuzzy. He's kind of hazy. So it's a good rendition of that. But what I think is most surprising is that Bottom hits the hammer on the head. As one of my students once said, he hits the hammer on the head. That is, he stumbles into a sort of larger truth or possibility. And notice that he seems to intuit that something extraordinary has happened. I have had a most rare vision. This is a speech the actor has to decide whether to play this strictly for laughs or give it more aura. I could imagine this being done, for instance, you could have the speaker coming over into the spotlight, and he could deliver the speech much more sort of solemnly. I have had a most rare vision. has the wit of man to say? Or he could clown it up more. I have had a most rare vision. Hee-haw, right? Play it up, play the comedy up. I think what's marvelous is the poise between it. This is not conscious on Bottom's part, but Shakespeare is giving us a view, it's a glimpse of something supernatural or remarkable, a most rare vision. And when Bottom screws up the senses here, man is a patched fool. If he says, what methought I was, the eye of man hath not heard, etc. Well, that turns out to be a passage from the Bible. And it's a rather famous passage which Shakespeare would have heard many times in church. That is, it's from St. Paul. And Paul is describing, he says, the eye of man hath not seen, the ear of man hath not heard, man's hand is not able to touch the kingdom of God, the grace that awaits the faithful. So he's evoking, even if he, Bottom, doesn't quite know it or just kind of mixes it up, he's evoking a kind of transcendent or sublime experience. And then finally, notice the final joke in this speech is also a kind of beautiful or meaningful joke, I guess I'd want to say. He says, I will get Peter Quince to write a ballad. It shall be called Bottom's Dream. Well, yeah, it is silly of Bottom to be so egocentric, unfailingly. He's asinine in his self-centeredness. But look what his instinct is, to turn his experience into art. I wonder what Shakespeare thinks of someone whose tendency, whose instinct is to make art. Of course, Bottom turns out to be closer, I would think, to Shakespeare than Theseus, the ostensible authority, the man with all the answers. There too is a kind of topsy-turvy, where sublime and ridiculous are not opposites and not simply turned upside down, but indistinguishable.